Alright, welcome everybody to week 3, day 1. We're going to continue our talk of blueprints and interactivity and animations today. Before we do that though, talk a little more game design. So I've been watching a lot of videos by the great Sandy Petersen. Sandy Petersen is one of my personal heroes. He is an absolute legend in the gaming world. I won't even say video gaming world because the dude makes role-playing games and video games and books and everything. This dude is just amazing. He's really, really a nice guy too. I've never met him. Actually, no, I take it back. I have met him. I think. I'm pretty sure I met him. Even though I didn't realize it at the time. I think I met him at Gen Con. I talked to the guy who made Cthulhu Wars, which is this Kickstarter board game. And I'm pretty sure that was him that I talked to, even though I didn't realize it at the time. Cthulhu Wars looks like they have all these really cool miniatures on it. And so Sandy Petersen was one of the developers of the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. And so he knows all about the Lovecraftian mythos with, Dagoth and, Cthulhu and Relay and, all the other Star Spawn and all the other cool stuff from the Lovecraftian mythos. So, what's up, Mace?
It's not working.
What's not working?
Can you take a look?
Hang on. Anyway, so he worked for Chaosium for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, and he worked for id Software on a game called Doom and Doom 2 and Quake. He left id Software for Ensemble Studios, where he worked on Age of Empires 2, Age of Empires 3. The guy, he worked on Civilization, if you remember that computer game. It's one of the great Sid Meier's Civilizations, one of the great all-time classics. Dude's just really amazing. And yeah, so he's got a YouTube channel, and so I've been watching a lot of his videos. And I think it would actually be good for you guys, this guy right here. He waxed all the new AoE2 stuff. Because AoE2 got remade. Microsoft sort of killed Ensemble Studios. They were the best gaming division in Microsoft, and they sort of killed them. And I learned about why last night from watching his videos. The Microsoft Games people brought in somebody from EA. Yay, EA, what a great company. And the guy was promised a bonus if he can make the gaming division profitable within 3 years. And so he planned to make it profitable by releasing a game and then firing everybody in Ensemble Studios. Which would, obviously, you'll have money coming in from the game, and you won't have money going out for the people, and so it'll be profitable. And it turned out he screwed up so badly that it wasn't profitable after 3 years. But that it basically killed Ensemble, which was a huge shame. But Microsoft has since remade Age of Empires 2 several times now with some fan mod people, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be talking about modding. It's a great way into the gaming industry. And what he said about EA was actually similar to what Mr. Bell said last week, which is, get a job at EA. It's got huge turnover. They're always hiring. You get your name on some AAA titles, and then you're in the industry, and you can work elsewhere. That said, it's not easy to get a job at EA. I was talking to the EA recruiter for internships, and they have a lot of people applying. So, just toss your hat in the ring, apply. You never know. The most important thing, of course, is to have a portfolio. You need to have things under your belt. Like id Software hired him for the Quake because of his work with Chaosium and doing the Call of Cthulhu stuff. And Quake and the people that did Software played D&D, and Quake has like a Lovecraftian kind of theme to it, story if there is such a thing to it. Okay, so not working for Satan, yeah, it's fair. Like I personally wouldn't want to work for them either. And they all make you use the Frostbite engine. Which you can't prep for, right? Because they've never released any documentation on it or any of the stuff, and so you can't practice on Frostbite prior to going to work at EA. Whereas if you work for a company that does Unreal Engine development, you can get a lot of time and experience in doing Unreal Engine. There's great demos and tutorials online, and so you can take this class, the next class, and get kind of the basics down for Unreal Engine without working there first. Okay, so the one criticism I did have of Sandy Peterson, if you can call it that, is he said that Age of Empires 3 was the best Age of Empires. Age of Empires 2 is definitely the best, so I did want to say that. So it's not just all fan worship, and the reason for that, there's actually a reason for it, and this is what I wanted to mention to you guys. Age of Empires 3 had a very hard to figure out counter system. So this is who counters who. And the thing in particular that I want to point out is the artillery cannon counters. There's 3 different types of cannons in the game. One that's for taking down buildings, one for taking down infantry, and one for taking down artillery. And if you look at them, it's not immediately obvious which one of these should be which. Like, why is this good against infantry and why is this one good against artillery? It's not really clear. Whereas in Age of Empires 2, a guy with a long spear is good against cavalry. A guy with a giant shield is good against archers. Like the visual clues and cues sort of reveal what's going on. Like, why are my archers not doing any damage? Well, you're shooting guys that have these giant shields. That's why. Whereas with these, you're firing cannons versus cannons, and you're either winning or you're losing, and you don't know why. Unless you hover over the unit, and then it has this huge tooltip showing you all the different counters that it's good at and bad at, and it's like this massive essay, and it's really not intuitive. Like, you actually have to play the game a lot to kind of understand what's going on here, and light cavalry is countered by this, but not by this. Like how? You know what I mean? Like, how is like, these horses look pretty much the same to me, and some of them counter heavy cav and some counter light cav. There's heavy infantry and light infantry, and why does this guy counter heavy infantry and this guy counter light infantry? This guy is not wearing any armor. Like, it's just, and when you and it's like, okay, well, play the game and learn it. Here's the other thing, is that the game had an interesting system of leveling up. So the more that you played a civilization, the more unlocks you would get on the civilization. You'd actually level yourself up as the civilization. And they got rid of it in the remake because it was actually pretty unfair if you're a level 1 Portuguese playing a level 30 Portuguese, right? They just have more stuff unlocked and they're probably going to kill you. But what that meant was that you really mained one civilization because it took a really long time to level your home city up to level 50. And so you didn't know exactly what the units were for the other people because you didn't play them. In Age 2, people would just try all the different civilizations. You'd kind of get a feel for each of them. You're like, okay, the elite Teutonic Knights, they have really heavy armor, they walk slow, but you can counter them with archers. Age 3, you would play one civ over and over, so you know that civ and what it's good at. But if you're staring at a bunch of the Iroquois, which got renamed the... I'm going to butcher the name. Haudenosaunee. In the remake, it's like, it's unclear which one of these guys is going to counter my heavy infantry, which one's going to counter my light infantry. You know what I mean? Which one of these two guys counters my heavy cav, which one like, when you're looking at enemy units, you don't know what they're good at and what they're bad at. And so you just throw your guys into combat, and of course they die because the AI generally builds countering units to what you have. And so it just works out to be a very unintuitive experience until you've mastered all of the civilizations, and then people apparently seem to like it. I guess if you play a game for 400 hours, you kind of have to like it. So maybe it's a self-selecting process. I don't know. So, personally, if I looked at these different cannons, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one of them, like, is good against what. You know what I mean? Like, if I just had to do a poll. Okay, so that was a little talk about Age of Empires 2 and 3. Let me show you the difference. Skirmish 2. So this is the guy that is good against archers right here. Right, like he's got a big shield. Like, you know, the Q is right there. This guy's good against mounted units, right? Light cav, heavy cav doesn't matter. There's not different counters to light cav and heavy cav. It's just if it has a horse, I can poke it with a stick. You know, like you don't have to, you know, you don't have to really think about that, right? They got a big pokey stick. So, one thing that's a little unrealistic is that the swords guys are strong against spears, whereas in real life it's the opposite, right? In real life, spears were sort of the dominant melee weapon, and swords generally lose to spears. Now that might who's the guy that does Iron Gate Hema? I don't know if I just triggered him or if he's nodding. If you know how to counter a spear with a sword, then you know, but it's hard. Yeah. Lindy beige sword versus spear. Yeah, like a friend of mine does kenjutsu, like actual like Japanese sword fighting, and they would just hand a spear to a guy with no training, and they would generally dominate even the people that are black belts in kenjutsu. Like, it's spears are better than swords. Scientific proof. Lindy beige. Yeah. So they ran through a series of tests, and anyway, so the spears would win 80-90% of the time, something like that. And of course, when you're in a formation, you know, spears are even better because you got a forest of spears. I fight SCA, and trust me, if you're a dude with a sword and a shield, and you try walking by yourself into a forest of spears, you will get stabbed repeatedly. Like there's no winning move for you. Like the main thing that you do when you're holding a shield like that is you're guarding the spears behind you. So guys behind me would have like a big old spear, and they'd be spearing over my head, and I'm sitting there fending off the enemy shields, and I'm mostly just blocking with my sword. So that is a criticism of Age of Empires 2, is that the champs, the sword unit in Age 2, really shouldn't counter the spears, but it's a game design issue. Oh, how's that a champ? So these guys are the champions, I guess, and they somehow counter these guys. So, yeah, these guys here. And to be fair, I guess they have pretty good armor, whereas the spears have very light armor. So, yeah, I guess that works. So armor works. Like that's something that people who don't fight don't really understand. So armor actually works really well. Not against guns, but against melee weapons. Like if you have a full set of like Gothic full plate, it actually works really well. Fiore de Libera, yeah, that's the guy that wrote the book that the Iron Gate people use, I think. Yeah, I mean if you got armor like that, like probably pretty good. Yeah, like you know, it's hard to break that. You know what I mean? Like it's not easy. You know, grapple, knock him down, stab him through the slit with a stiletto. You know, I guess the way you do that. But it's you know, you know, armor's there for a reason, and works pretty well. Even leather armor is surprisingly effective. Okay, I'd like an nerf for Spirit Space. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Liberi sword versus spear. Let's see what the master says about it. Sword versus spear. Sword versus spear. Interesting. He's gonna try and block it using a. It's probably gonna parry with his sword, I guess. Yes. So he's gonna beat the spear out of the way. Yeah, I guess you can try it. I fought sword versus spear a lot. It's a tough matchup. The best you can do is just try and put your shield up and close in really fast. And if they get a free shot on you, if they don't kill you with a free shot, then you usually kill them. All right. So let's do some Unreal Engine. Okay. Game design for today. But yeah, I highly recommend seeing Sandy Peterson's video series. What happened to that? It just vanished. So, Sandy of Cthulhu. And so he's got fun facts about Quake. I watched that one. Apparently somebody put PCP in American McGee's drink when they went out to dinner with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. He says it wasn't Trent Reznor though. It doped him. Maybe the guys from Pantera. Okay. I'll post the link in here. What you drinking? This is a Iced Hallelujah, which is from Cupjua. It is cinnamon. Sorry if you hear rattling sounds. Yeah. Yeah, Hallelujahs are delicious. They're not very healthy though, so I don't order them too much. I have a description on here. Was it vanilla, cinnamon, sweet cream? I think. Oh, there it is. Yeah, espresso, white chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon, and sweet cream. It's not very healthy, but amazingly delicious. And if you really want it to be obnoxiously delicious, get it with half and half also, and it's like the most rich thing you've ever had in your life. It's pretty good. DoorDash, lol. DoorDash got me through the pandemic now. Alright. Okay, so it's floating. Okay, so that's something I talked about with the IS50B people on Friday. Should probably mention it to you as well. Or was it Thursday? I think it's Thursday. This is something called a Z-buffer conflict, or Z-fighting, called sometimes. So what's happening here is that this text here has a size of 0. It's basically flat. And so I snapped it down to the ground, so it's exactly at the same height as the grass. And so what's happening is, for every pixel on the screen, there's a color and there's a depth. The depth is how far it is away from the camera, and the color is the color. And so what happens is that if you try rendering to the same spot on the screen, like where my mouse is right here, it tries rendering the blue mushroom, it tries rendering the red mushroom. Whichever one's closer gets drawn. And so in this case, the red mushroom is closer than the blue mushroom, so it gets drawn. Now, what happens if they're the same distance away? What happens is floating point numbers are error prone, it will randomly round up or round down, and so even between frames, you don't always get the same results here, and you'll get what's called a Z buffer conflict, and it's really kind of annoying. So the way you solve that is by pulling it up a tick. Yep. My daughter worked on the upstairs area here, and I think there's some overlap here, maybe not. She did a pretty good job, actually. But yeah, anytime you overlap things, especially when you have snap to grid turned on, yeah, right here they're not exactly overlapping, so you don't see it. Anytime you have snap to grid turned on, then they will be at exactly the same height, and so yeah, I guess I don't need you. Or the same location, you'll get a Z buffer conflict. So something to keep an eye out for, and you can solve it by turning off snap to grid. There's these things right here, and there's one snap on rotation, snap when moving, snap when scaling. You turn those on and off individually from each other, and that will resolve. It's very annoying and very common, because if you always snap to grid, then things will be the same distance away, and you'll get the horrible flickering. A turn-based Hema game, but it's difficult to get all the details right. Yeah, it's there's a there is a video game right now called not Mordhau. It's a new one. It's called something. Hellish Court. That's it. Yeah. Can I stream 30 frames a second? Sure. So, it's supposed to be like a pretty accurate Hema game. Might wanna check that out. Real-time turn-based. Hellish Court is cool. Yeah. Kingdom Come Deliverance also does a really nice job with the realism. The Master Strikes are a little preposterous, a little OP, but the way that Kingdom Come Deliverance does the armor system, the way they do their armor system is actually really nice. They have 20 slots for armor in the game, and so you've got outer garment, body plate, body chainmail, body garment, and so you can have like 4 layers on your chest, right? You can have your tunic or whatever, your chest plate, chainmail underneath it, and then like a gambeson or something like that underneath. And the game actually simulates every spot on your body, the condition of the armor. So if you keep hitting in the same spot over and over again, you can break through the chainmail and then start damaging the person. And if you don't have armor on, or if you hit an unarmored spot on the person, then it's bad news. You stab somebody in the arm, they start bleeding from the arm, and you can't like drink a healing potion or bandage yourself while you're in a fight. You're bleeding, so you better kill the guy fast or you bleed to death. So, yeah, there's leg chain, leg plate, boots, and hosen. Then your head, you got your helmet, you got a coif, which is like a padded layer underneath your helmet. You got a chainmail, which the coif protects your chainmail from chafing against your skin. And then you've got a neck chain also that protects this area. It really should have a gorget as well on it, but it literally simulates the physical properties of the armor. And so when you're fighting somebody, you're actually like smashing their armor if they're armored, and that takes a while. And so do you run out of stamina? Yeah, you do. You get tired, and if you've ever done Hema, you know how tired you get. And so and if you get tired, then you're vulnerable. So they can grab you and stab you and stuff like that. So you have to manage all these different elements of it. And that's just for one person. Then you're fighting multiple people. It's it's not the world's best combat system. Like, it's not intuitive. But I do like their approach to it. After you kind of figure it out, it kind of grows on you. Quaif. I was about to say Gorget. Yeah. Yeah. So it has a neck drape. Like my helmet has an aventail on it. An aventail is something that droops from the chin of the helmet to provide extra protection for your neck area. But I wear a gorget beneath it as well. So the aventail will start absorbing some of the shock, and the gorget will eat the rest of it, hopefully. I don't get hit on the neck very often. I did get hit once a couple of years ago, and the spear actually caught the chin of my helmet and flipped it off, and they actually had to stop the fighting on the field because the guy pulled so hard it broke the strap that I had, because it's strapped down, so that doesn't happen. He ripped it off. So they had to bring the fighting of 1,000 people to stop because I had been unhelmeted. It's kind of cool if you think about it. A little embarrassing at the time for me, but kind of cool if you think about it. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about it. Yeah, so realism. Realism in a video game isn't always needed, but people will appreciate it if you can pull it off right in a way that works in a game. All right, so here we are. We got our door thing that we're working on here. We've got a door, we got a trigger box. We walk in right now to the trigger box, and it says hello. Nothing else. So what we want is for this door to like swing open or slide into the ground or something like that. We got our elevator here. I hear a lot of people are having trouble with it, so if you weren't able to get it done on time, I'll take it tomorrow. No problem. Especially since today's lesson might help you a little bit. So, the penguin's living pretty. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come in here and hit Edit Blueprint on my door. Come back where we were before. We've got Begin Overlap. Right now it prints hello. If I come over to the viewport, you can see I've got the door. I got a trigger box, and the trigger box is not parented to the door. Okay. The box is why are the hotkeys not working? Like keyboard not attached? What's going on here? Yeah, it is. You can type on Discord, but there we go. Alright. Weird. It just wasn't responding. Oh, it was because it was renaming this. Okay. Trigger box. Okay. Okay. So over here in Event Graph. Okay. So what we're going to do is say when they begin overlapping, we are going to we're going to make a timeline. And I know that Alex tried doing this on its own. It's not important. This will be called door open. So what I did was I deleted the thing that said hello, and I instead created a timeline. So I right-clicked and chose timeline. Okay, add timeline. And so timeline is a way of doing an animation. There's multiple ways of doing animations in Unreal Engine. Last time we did it directly. Every tick, we moved the platform a certain number of spots up. And when we hit the max, we turn the direction around and move it down. And when it hits the bottom, it turns around and goes up. And that was your homework assignment over the weekend. So a timeline will allow us to do the same thing, but in a more sophisticated fashion. At the simplest level, it will be exactly the same, but at a more, you'll see, there's more options for it. Okay, so I'm not going to use event tick, I'm not going to use begin play. I can always spin it back if I want to. Okay, so when we overlap the box trigger, then it's going to start playing this. It's going to start playing this timeline, and I'm going to double click on this, and it opens up the timeline editor. So again, I right click, shows create add timeline, and then I double click on the timeline, and then I'm looking at this thing here. Okay, so right now it's blank. The timeline doesn't do anything. Can we edit the door so you can't walk through it? Yeah, if you click on the door and go down to collision, it should be set to block all dynamic by default. If it's not, set it to that. Yeah. So the trigger box is overlap all dynamic. It doesn't block, it overlaps. So you can walk inside of it, it generates an overlap event. The block all dynamic stops you from walking into it, and you can set it to generate a hit event when somebody hits the door. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a timeline, and there's a couple different ways of doing this. I'm just going to do the simplest, which is to add a float track here. And so what this says is, as time progresses, as the timeline plays, what happens? And what I'm going to do is have it like rotate the door 90 degrees. Okay. So I first need to give it a name. Rename, thank you. And this will be called output rotation. Mine set to that. You can walk through anyway. I don't know. There's a lot of levels where things can go wrong. Just feel a small earthquake. It's hard to say. Like, I returned that TV that I was using as my monitor. I bought it. It was a Sony X85J. I bought it because it's a 4K TV that has 120 hertz update speed. Cool. You know, that should be good enough a monitor until Asus finally decides if they're going to repair my monitor or not, which has been almost 2 months now, and they still haven't even said if they're going to begin doing it. But when you put it into 120 hertz mode, the image quality goes down. So if you had a horizontal line like this, some of the pixels would be drawn on the wrong line, and to me that was just unacceptable. So they were probably using some sort of compression to get 120 hertz at 4K. It has HDMI 2.1. It has the bandwidth for it. So I don't know what the deal was with that. I don't know if they were going to patch in better support for 120 hertz at a later date. They promised they had VRR, variable rate refresh, G-Sync, FreeSync. Yeah, that didn't exist either. So it worked fine as a 4K 60 hertz television, but I'm not going to pay the extra $300, which is what they charge for the 120 hertz and for the VRR when they don't exist. So I had a 2-week return window on it, so I returned it to Best Buy, and I just picked up a new monitor. Okay. So if you hear shaking from over here, this is an old 1080p monitor TV that I've got over here on the other screen. Okay. So let's add a point to it. Okay. And I'm going to say at time 0, it's going to have a value of 0. So you can do that by just right-clicking and choose Add Key. Okay. And you can mouse wheel out if you like, and mouse wheel in if you like, to zoom in and out on the timeline. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the, we're going to say over the span of a second. How long do you guys think it should be for a door to open, to swing open? What do you think? How long do you think it should take for a door to open? 0.75? Okay. Go with that. So one thing you should realize about timelines is that clicking on it is pretty imprecise, and so usually I just get into the neighborhood, I choose Add Key, and then I actually change the exact values up here. So at 0.75, I'm going to set it to a value of 90 degrees. Yeah, 90 degrees, fine. Okay. And if we zoom out really, really far, in fact, there's a snap to, where is it? Right there, zoom to fit vertical. Okay. You're going to have to zoom out. And so they have options for zooming to fit vertical and horizontal, because by default it goes from like 0 to 1, and we're going to 90 because we're gonna be outputting this timeline. every frame it's going to run, and every frame it's going to output how far the door should be rotated from its original point. And yeah, so in 0.75 seconds, it's going to rotate 90 degrees. Cool. And we might have to play with it. It might have to be a negative number if it's rotating the wrong way, but this is a good starting point. And let's see, the length of the timeline then will be 0.75 seconds. That's the end of it. If you, if you leave it longer than that, it'll still play, but it's gonna just be stuck at 90 degrees open. Do you want it to autoplay? That could be funny. You start the game, the door opens. It's probably not what we want. Do we want it to loop, so play over and over and over? No, that's not what we want either. Replicated means for multiplayer. Don't care about that. Ignore time dilation. We don't want to do that either. If we do have time dilation set, we want everything to slow down. Time dilation is like when you get a power up and the whole world slows down. That'd be like a time dilation effect. UE4 supports it. So you want this to slow down as well. So I think that's pretty good. You can change the curves on this. If you want, you can change it so that it is that. And then, let's see here. You can change these things so that they don't have like a linear interpolation, so it doesn't just swing smoothly. You can make it so that it slowly opens, then it speeds up, then comes back a little bit if you want. That could be cool. That might be interesting to look at. So let's try that and hit compile and save. You can just leave it as linear as well, and you change that by right-clicking on the individual points and choosing if they should be a linear interpolation or a cubic interpretation or whatever. So it's up to you. There you go. Nice. That might be interesting. It might swing backwards a little bit. It'll open up and then kind of come back a little bit. It's kind of cool. All right, so compile, save, and we'll go back into the event graph. And so what's going to happen now is when the person walks over the box. Actually, the first thing we'll do is we're just going to output the output rotation. Okay. So this is how I do my development. Print string. I just want to make sure it's working. Right. That's the worst thing in the world is when you're doing this and nothing happens. So I'm just very paranoid after having done UE4 for a while. So I always like just to see the numbers coming out and make sure they look right to me. So what I did was I created a print string node. I hooked up the update. So every tick, it's going to do a print string. And what am I printing? I'm not printing hello anymore. I'm printing the output rotations. This should be a number that ranges from 0 to 90. And maybe for a little while it's actually going to be above 90 and then come back down. And so this thing here with a dot, that is a casting node. It converts from one type to another. In this case, it's converting from the lime green to the hot pink. Lime green means a float, which is a number with decimals, and hot pink is a string. And so it's going to convert from a number to a string. So it's going to go from being a number to a word holding that number in it. So like if you were to convert pi, 3.1415, into a string, it would become the word, like, you're writing in a book 3.1415. So it could be printed at the screen. Okay. So that just means convert data types. Yeah. And Unreal is actually pretty nice about it. You could you can hook up, like, if I dragged actor into inString, you'll see it actually will get the display name of the object. So it's actually fairly intelligent. And that's one of the benefits of blueprints over text development, is that, like, when you're actually coding with, like, words, like a professional programmer or whatever, you have to know all this stuff and know which casting function to call and know how to get display name or whatever, and the blueprint system will just kind of figure it out for you. Okay, so compile, save. So all I've done is I've created a timeline. I added a float track. I added 2 points on it. Hooked them up. The second point will be at 90 degrees after 0.75 seconds, and the first point's at 0, 0. I reduced the length of it to 0.75, and then I took the update line here, hooked it up to print string, and so every tick while the timeline's running, it's going to be printing the rotation of the door. Hopefully. Let me snap that down here, hit play, and come over here, and there you go. So you can see the timeline just ran, and then when I leave, nothing happens. But when I walk back up, it's already at 90. Okay? Right? Well, the door is open. Right? So the way this code is set right now, the door will swing open and then it'll just stay open permanently. It doesn't go back. So that's it. The timeline hit the end, and when you try hitting play again, it does one update and say, okay, 90 degrees, and calls it a day. All right, so what we're going to do now is change the rotation. So I'm going to drag in the door. So you can drag elements of the of your blueprint into here. If you want to mess with something in another blueprint, you can do it. It is just slightly more irritating to do. So, like if I wanted to have a switch that turned those elevators on and off, I could do that. It's just I'll need to show you how to do that. So I'm dragging in the door. And so what am I going to do with the door? I am going to rotate it. Okay. So I'm going to set the world rotation. So I'm going to set the world rotation of the door. How much am I going to rotate it? I'm going to split this because this can actually rotate it in all the axes. Rotate around X, rotate around Y, rotate around Z. I wanted to rotate around the Z axis, right? Z is pointed up. So I'm going to spin it around the vertical orientation. And so I'm going to hook up that to that. And it might be funny to do the other ones. If you make it roll, it'll turn like this. You know? But that should do it. So let's come over here. There you go. And now the door. And you saw how it like swung into the wall, then it came back. That's kind of cool. Let's do that one more time. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's because I didn't turn on linear. I have that cubic interpolation on. So it'll swing open through the wall and then pop back. It's kind of a cool look. Looks, I mean, it's bad because it's it's penetrating the wall. But like that idea of it like swinging open and then coming back, it's kind of cool. I kind of dig it. But because it's going through the wall, I'm just going to switch this back to linear. Compile, save, snap down, hit play again. And there's a nice boring open. Before it had a little bit of character to it, right? Because in real life, things very rarely move perfectly linearly, right? When you fling a door open, it doesn't just, like it's on a motor or something. So the version before had a little more character, but it also kind of looked bad because it was going through the wall. So there you go. And there is a door that opens. I'm going to put it back. Why not? Back here and maybe pull that down a little bit here. Because I kind of like that effect of it going open and then coming back a little bit. Makes it look like it has a little bit of momentum to it. There is a fair bit of artistry in game development, obviously. Let's see. And it still is going through the wall. I was hoping to keep a little bit of that. Alright. I'll just pull it down. Even if you're a programmer, you're gonna be. Well, it looks better. It at least it isn't like this mechanical like that effect. It has it has a little bit of character to it. Okay. For me, it isn't printing string. After walking into the border, I see no print statements. Okay. What did you type for that? I didn't type anything. So in order to do the casting, you just like if I had a print node. You just drag directly from the float into the string, and it converts it for you. If it's not printing anything, then your timeline's not working, right? And that's why it's important to start, like, do you know if the timeline's getting called? You know, like, did you put a print string here, right? Like, that's what I did last time, right? With begin overlap, because the problem could be in your timeline. The problem could be your trigger box isn't generating collision events. It could be your scene root is set to ignore people for some reason. It could be your box isn't in the right place in the world. There's a lot of reasons why nothing's happening in Unreal Engine, and that's one of the annoying things about it. So after walking into the border, I see no print statements. So did you, Aaron, did you do the print string here off the begin overlap first before doing the timeline? Because if you do that, then you know that the problem is here, right? If you have it looking like this, put it back in just for a second, just to verify. So you know, do something like that, and you know, call this one like before timeline. Call this one like after timeline. And again, if you keep your blueprints open while you hit play, oops, what did I do? Hit Windows key P instead of Alt P. You can actually see over here, right? If it's working, right? And also you can look at the print screens on the right. You can look at the print screens to see what's happening. So debugging UE4 is kind of annoying. You can also set a breakpoint on these things with F9. So you can set a breakpoint, and you know, just look at the values coming out and see if they look right. So for your timeline, if you double click on it, make sure that you've got 2 points. You've added a float track. You added 2 points. One's at 0, 0. The other one is at 0.75 for time and 90 for the value, because we're doing a 90-degree rotation. You might be wondering, like, why doesn't it use radians? Like C++, which is the language that UE4 is developed in, uses radians for everything. It does not use degrees. That's actually a great question. I don't know the answer to that. To me, it seems like degrees are easier to work with, right? Like, I can just type in 90 and have a 90-degree rotation. I can't type in pi over, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't have those numbers, you know, what is a 30-degree thing in radians? Like, yeah. Right, I don't want to type that. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to type a 30 than that. So that's my guess. Okay, so that is a timeline. Now, one thing we can do is we can make it swing shut when we leave. So if we want to do that, we need to have it swing shut when we leave. So the leaving event is called actor end overlap. Event actor end overlap. So when the person leaves the hitbox, then we want it to play the same timeline in reverse. So play means start advancing the timeline. As long as it's going, it'll keep advancing. But the second that we end the overlap, then it's like it puts the car into reverse, and wherever it was, it'll come back the other way. And I think that should do it. We might need to duplicate a node, but I think that should do it. So we come in here, it opens and it closes. Yep. It's got a nice functioning door. Now we get to see what happens if it tries smashing us. Yeah, we don't fall through the world, that's good, I guess. better than most engines. No. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So pretty easy, right? So we have an actor event begin overlap and actor end overlap, and so this one will play the timeline forwards. It's like putting a car into drive, and it will just keep going until it hits the end of the timeline. Or if we end the overlap, then it immediately puts the car into reverse and it plays the timeline backwards until it hits the beginning. And so either way, the timeline is going to play till the end. Either the end one way or the end the other way. You can, there's other things you can do, like you can make it so it plays from start, so when you enter it, the door will swing shut and then open up. If you reverse from end, then it'll fly open and fly back and then go backwards. It doesn't seem to make much sense for what we're doing here, and you can stop it if you want. So if the player hits a button, it'll stop the timeline or something. Would you guys like to see how to do this by making the user hit a button like the use key instead of because video games, originally you actually had to hit use. And you'd walk up to the door and hit use, and it would open the door. And it was with Quake that it became very popular. Quake had a use button in the game, and it wasn't used, ironically enough. There's actually a use thing buried within the guts of the code, but they pulled out all the references to it. It's not functional. It doesn't do anything. And so what they found was that it was just easier to just come up on a door and then have the door open automatically without making the user hit something. Right. So, okay, yeah, if you guys want to see how to do that, sure. Okay. All right, so let's talk about key bindings then. Key bindings, let's save. Okay. What happened to the lighting here? Yeah, that's better. Okay, that was weird. It's like the lighting completely reversed polarity. That's strange. Look at that window light. The window is rectangular, and the shadow coming out of it is hexagon. I wonder if it's hitting anything else. It's strange. It's a very strange shadow there. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Oh, I wonder if... Yeah, it's probably to do with this light. Here. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about key bindings. So, in Unreal, door prints string but is not opening. Try printing the output of the timeline and see what numbers you get. So the output of the timeline should be connect the update node to print string, and then output rotation. Output the results of that, and that'll tell you if the thing is running properly or not. So, you know, there's definitely a skill to try and figure out what you're doing wrong. You know what I mean? And Unreal Engine is more annoying than most. All right. So where were we? So key bindings. So key bindings are found under project settings. So don't be afraid when you click on that. There's a lot of project settings. And maybe I should have talked about the game mode and stuff like that first, but I feel it's kind of more intuitive to just jump right in and sort of figure things out as you go along. So go to Edit and go to Project Settings. Go to Edit, go to Project Settings, and you will see there's a lot of options here. There's a lot of options. Plugins. Agri's pretty cool. Input. Okay. So under project settings, engine input. I'll type that out in the chat channel. It's printing, then that's the output of your timeline, 0.25. You probably didn't set the keyframes on the timeline properly if it's printing at 0.25, or Here, let me screenshot the thing for you, and you can see what's going on. Screenshot. That's the blueprint. My guess is the points on your timeline aren't set properly. So this point is at 0, 0. This point is at 90 and 0.75. So that's, you know, my guess is that you don't have the points on the timeline set right. And make sure the length of it is 0.75. Alright, so where was I? Edit, project settings, input. Okay. So we can do a keybind here. Oh. Now you could just make it when they hit E, it does something, but it's probably a little better to the time is 0.75 and the value should be 90. So you have your the time and value aren't set right. Yeah. The value should be 90 because that's how many degrees. So what we're saying is that after 0.75 seconds, it's going to rotate 90 degrees. And like I said, it might end up being negative 90 or you know, you just play it and then just see which way the door swings and you just change it afterwards. You know, you don't have to think too hard about these things. Just do it and see if it works. There's probably some math people out there screaming at me right now. How? What? Now we should know the theory. Yeah. The nice thing about working on Unreal Engine is that you just prototype things really fast. So it's backwards, negative. Yeah. All right, reset VR. I feel like we don't need that, so I'm going to delete the key binding for that. So right now we've got two key binds. We've got one for jump. We got one for fire. And right now, jump is set to spacebar and fire is set to left mouse button. And it's also set using the various VR triggers, which I'm going to just delete because I don't care about them. Actually, maybe I shouldn't delete them. So I think the blueprints are using whatever. I'm going to delete them anyway. I don't care. I'm not using a gamepad either. If you guys use gamepads, keep them in. I'll just leave it in there. And I'm just going to delete all the VR stuff because I'm not going to be doing this in VR. When you deviate slightly, my biggest problem with all of this is the same thing but slightly different. You deviate slightly, unless you're really good, it's almost impossible to figure it out. Yeah, well, that's why I'm trying to teach you how to figure it out, right? And this is a skill that comes up in computer science and it comes up in life, right? Is the ability to identify where things are going wrong. And so that's why I do that print statement every time. Even though I've done this before and I know it's probably going to work, sometimes it doesn't, you know, to be fair. Like the platform wasn't moving because I forgot to switch it to movable, right? And so those print statements just give me a really fast, like, is it working? Yeah, no? Okay. And then I can go from there. Like, I put one before the timeline, one after the timeline. Okay, is the problem the timeline, or is it not generating an overlap event? And so by dropping those things in, or you can set breakpoints. That's another good way. You can quickly zoom in on what the problem is, and then if you're still stuck, you know, just ask me, right? But yeah, and so the it's a skill. Debugging is a skill. And it's a skill that I try to teach because it's really, really important. And it's true in, like, if you're doing science, like if you're a chemistry major or something and your experiment's not working, right? You're doing some sort of process chemistry. You got chemicals feeding in and going through all these stages and things like that, and it's coming out at the end as water, and you're like, it's not supposed to be water. You know, all right, where's the problem? You know, and you have to zoom in and find it. Or if you do electrical engineering, you know, the electrical engineering department I worked with didn't build any debugging things into the board they built. They built this giant complicated board is to do video conferencing with the military using wavelet encoding. I talked about wavelets in IS50B on Friday. They thought it would work right the first time. So they didn't add any ability to debug their hardware. So like, it's extra cost. I'm sure it'll work fine. As it turned out, it didn't work at all. And then they had no idea why. And they didn't have enough money to build another one. And so they spent close to a year scratching their heads trying to figure out what was wrong with it. And it would have been a lot easier if they'd, made it so they could have sat there and looked at every. You put some trace leads coming out of it for the oscilloscope. You sit there and figure out exactly which part's not working. Nope, they didn't add those. So sucks to be them. All right, so we're going to add a new key binding, jump, fire, and this one will be use. Okay. Like I said, we could make it just automatic so that when they hit E, it opens the door. You can actually just bind to the E key directly, but I think it's better to do it this way. This is the more proper way of doing it, because then, if this is a real game, users could adjust their key binds and things like that. So what you do is you say when the user hits use, and that might be the E key, it might be something else, it might be a gamepad trigger. It's a better system rather than just making the user use the keyboard. Let everyone use the keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to bind this to the E key by default. So come down here, hit keyboard, and scroll down to E. I could search for it, but when you search for it, there's a lot of E's, right? So, not too helpful. So it's just easier. So what I did was I clicked on the plus to add a new action mapping. I typed in use here. You can add more mappings by clicking the plus, like that. And then I'm just going to bind it to E by default by clicking on keyboard and scrolling down. I'll also add a binding for gamepad, gamepad face button bottom, gamepad right trigger. I don't know. Gamepad right shoulder. I don't know. Left trigger. Sure, why not? Okay. And you can make it so they have to hit Shift E, Control E, whatever. I'm just gonna make it E. They hit E. Done. If you press the bottom to the left of none, you can just press your keyboard. Hit the button to the left of. Oh, that's nice. That's cool. I didn't know that. Neat. Thank you. Yeah. So what Shami just said was if you click there, you just type the key. Nice. Very cool. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff in Unreal Engine I don't know. It's a huge thing. Huge thing. All right. So that is that. I don't care about mobile. I don't care about VR. Mouse properties. Whatever. Okay, so we can then come back out and hit save. And if I hit play, you notice the use key doesn't do anything because currently it's not set to do anything. I'm hitting E right now, nothing's happening. Here, look at me, I'm hitting the left trigger. Yeah, nothing. Okay, so what we need to do is make the store activate on a use event rather than just the person walking forward. So does anyone have any questions about setting up the E key like that? Let me show that one more time if you want. So I'm going to disconnect. If you control click, it will disconnect something. Maybe, do I want it to use to open and then... Yeah, maybe we can do that. Maybe use will open the door, and then when we leave, the door swings shut automatically. That sounds kind of cool, all right? Sounds kind of cool. We'll try that. Okay. So I need to get the use event in here. Okay? And so I want it so that when the user hits E, it'll play the timeline. So if I type event use, look, there it is. Okay. So you can have it trigger when they press the key or when they release the key. Pressed feels better to me. And so that thing that I created there, it actually dynamically will recognize it, right? Like you can actually like input jump, right? That's when they hit the jump key. It does something. And so for each of those bindings you create there, blueprints will recognize they exist because you created a key binding for them. And so notice how it doesn't say anything about like the E key. It's a separation of concern, so that if the user were to remap their keys so that instead of E they use, I don't know, number pad 9 or something, your code's still the same here. It's not hard coded. Yeah. And so we'll hit compile and save. That should do it. Come up here. Notice that nothing happens. I hit E. And nothing happens. Alright, cool. Let's see here. The action use, nothing is happening. Interesting. Alright. Not save. Settings. Input. Use E. Did I not compile it? Maybe that's what the problem is. P. I wonder if it's because something else is consuming the event. It's probably it. Let's see. Something else you need to set up to get this to work. Let's leave these and just see if we can do event. So if something else is consuming the keyboard events, then yeah, see how that's not right. Okay, so the player, I think the player character, let's see. The player character is going to be doing that, so let's see. So I said, in an Unreal Engine, when things don't happen, then you get now you guys get to see the process. I haven't done this in a while. Let's see here, generate overlap events, input, and auto receive input. Maybe that's what it is. Okay. So let's receive the input from player 0, save, and let's try this. Maybe I shouldn't have deleted those, huh? Input use. There we go. Like, yeah, that's what it was. So there's a setting right here for input. And so you have to register a blueprint to get events like jump and use and things like that. And so right down here, under the input tab, I chose to auto receive input from player 0. Okay, player 0 is the first player. I'm making a first player game. How do you get input action use again? So you have to make it first. So if you haven't made it, it's not going to show up, right? So you have to go to edit, project settings, and input. So it's, here I'll type out the process here. Edit, project settings, input, then here, okay. Then add an action mapping for use and bind it to the E key. Then once you've done that, then your blueprints, then you can right click and choose event use. Input action use. Then in your blueprint, you can type input action use and it will show up. Make sure you enable receiving events from player 0, which I wonder if you can do it from here. Default scene root, outdoor self, input, auto receive input, yeah, there. True. Yeah, you can probably do it from here. So with the root node, you can choose auto receive input from player 0. Input priority controls, I believe, who gets to consume the event when it takes place. So let's see if that still works. I hit E. There you go. The door opens. So is that what we wanted though? Did we want it to be able to open from this far away? What do you guys think? Input action open door, if that's what you called it. Yeah, whatever you named it. It's not, use is not a thing by default. So is this what you guys want? The ability, I'm just over here, I hit use and the door opens. And then I have to walk up to it, and then when I walk away, it generates the end overlap event. What do we want? How should we fix this behavior? It's kind of nice, like a Jedi. Whoa! And then I walk out, and the door swings shut behind me. It's kind of cool. Whoa! We have to be in the collision box. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we do that. So like when they enter the collision box, like we turn on a variable. Yeah, we can do that. What if what if I was like here, right? And I hit use. Should it open? Yeah. So we can do it, you know, if I'm here, like it feels like it should open, right? Even though I'm not technically in the collision box. We can do it either way. So what we could do is on event overlap, we could enable the door to move, I guess. And then on event end overlap, we disable the ability to use the door. You guys want to see how to do that? It should be. We can make the box bigger. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can do that, and then I'll show you guys how to make it so you don't have to be within the box also. So let's come into Blueprint Editor. And so what we want, if we're doing it that way, is when we begin overlapping, we want to like set a Boolean, right? Like the door is enabled or something like that. So let's make a variable. The variable I'm going to call is door enabled. Variable names are hard. What can I say? So when we begin overlapping, we are going to set this variable to be true. So I'm going to drag out door enabled, set door enabled to be true. And then when we end overlap, we want to set it to false. Set door enabled to false. The checkbox obviously is the state of it because it's a Boolean. Okay. So door enabled becomes false, and when we begin overlapping, door enabled is true. And then when we hit use, we want to branch. So branch, and we want to say if door enabled, so I'm going to drag that right on top of the condition there. So if door enabled is true, then it'll play. Now the trouble with this, if we do this for everything, then who gets to consume the use event is going to be an issue. But with one door, I guess it's okay. So I'm here, hit use, hit use from here, nothing. I hit use from here, nothing. I hit use from here, it works. Okay. So when I'm in the zone, it enables the Boolean. When I'm out of the zone, it disables the Boolean. Not bad. It's not a bad system. Did I see a landscape? Did I see a landscape in there? Did it draw a flower in? Okay. Yeah, it goes right up to there, huh? But it's not drawing it on the preview. That's interesting. Okay, let's come into landscape mode here. Paint. And I'm just going to paint this area here as the default. Make a little bit of space for me. Okay, so it won't. Maybe I'll make a little space to the platform here as well. There we go. All right. Manage. Looked a little weird having a flower pop up in here. You see that stair step pattern? That's a classic look of a low quality light map, right? And so whenever you see this, it's because the light quality is set pretty low. Okay, so that's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. We can do it that way. What if we had multiple doors? So let's try that. Alt drag will make another door, and I will rotate this over here and move it over here, over here. That. I think that's what my daughter was going for when I could. Drag, snap, rotate, scale. Okay. So we got another door. We can, a little room back there, whatever. But notice I can't open. Oh, look, I can walk right through this door, huh? Look at that. It's actually not rotating properly. And the reason for that is because I'm setting the world rotation not using its starting rotation. Right? So when I open it, it actually this is zero rotation right here. And so when I set its world rotation to 1, it goes to 0 and then adds 1 to it. So it actually snaps 90 degrees then keeps going. So what we need to do is we could set the absolute rotation, which is probably the better way of doing it. Let's just try walking through it. Yeah, okay. So it's not actually blocking at all. Maybe that's why we can walk through it. We need to save its initial, or we can set its relative location. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Okay, so we'll edit the blueprint. And rather than set world rotation, we'll set relative. We're going to set the door's relative rotation rather than the absolute rotation. So we're going to change its rotation relative to the scene root rather than to the world. Rather than setting its absolute rotation, which is the rotation it is within the world. And so before it was at -90, and the first time we update, we go to 0, then 1. Now we're just going to rotate it 90 degrees compared with the start, and that should hopefully fix it. We'll need to have a lecture on absolute and relative coordinates. There we go. All right, Leave. There we go. But you notice I can't open the other door. Okay? So this is a problem. This works fine as long as there's one door in the world. Okay? Do you guys know what the problem is? I have no idea what you can walk through it. Okay, let's maybe try and figure this out. So you collision, use config defaults, collision, actor, LED, cooking, generate overlap. Oh, that. Okay, let's go to the blueprint then. Blueprint editor. Door. Default scene root. Physics, cooking, activation, component, events, collision. Can't ever navigation, door, static mesh, block all dynamic, block all. Odd. Yeah, I'll have to play with that. This should be blocking everything. Simulation, variance, events, trigger overlap events. Character step onto it. Collision presets. It's supposed to block everything. Let's try event hit. See if we can figure out. Alright, so if it hits anything, it's going to print hello. Let's see if this activates. Could be the mesh itself, maybe. Yeah, it's not. Interesting. We might have to replace the door mesh then. Looks like it's not. Yeah, I'd have to play with it a little more. Okay. So it's texting. Okay, so why can we only have one door in this world? I mean, I guess we have two, but only one of them works. If I walk up, I'm in both of their things, but when I hit use, only one of them opens. One thing I should mention here is that it's also, if I'm not looking at it, I can still use the door. You see that? Like I actually could be looking away from the door and still use it. Which is, again, probably not what we want, right? If I'm looking this way and I hit use, it's a little weird for the door to open. You know what I mean? Because only one blueprint can eat the event. So if you throw an event called use, only one blueprint can pick up that event. It can't be consumed by multiple events. And so we have two doors here, both of which are trying to eat the use event, and only one of them gets it, in this case the second door. And also, like I said, it's not exactly working right. Like we don't, we want to be looking at a door to open it. So, this brings us to our next major topic. How do you know what you're looking at? This is one of the three big ways of interacting with the world. One of them is touching them, right? This one is really, really important. You might have heard of the term hit scan weapons in video games. Have you guys heard this term before? Hit scan weapon. You click a button and whatever you're looking at under your cursor instantly gets shot. This is not a hit scan weapon. This is a projectile weapon. It shoots a projectile. Hit scan weapon draws a line through the world instantaneously, and whatever's under the cursor there, the little red cursor, gets hit instantly. Most video games simulate bullets that way because bullets are too fast to see. So some games will actually simulate bullet physics. Counter-Strike does to a certain extent as far as penetrating solid objects. Sniper Contract, Ghost Warrior 2, i.e. the game with the longest name ever, actually simulates bullet physics with bullet drop and wind and all that other stuff, which is kind of cool. But that's what the game's about. Most games, they just do hit scan, right? So whatever, when you click, it just hits whatever is under the cursor. And it might have the max range on it. Battlefield, Escape from Tarkov, yeah. So what we really want is to use whichever door we're looking at, right? Does that make sense? So how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, let's talk about it. So we'll go back and edit the blueprint again. And if we edit the other blueprint, note that it's still the same. So I clicked on one door, hit edit blueprint. I'm now going to click on the other door and hit edit blueprint, and you'll see it's the same blueprint. So you just have multiple instances of the same blueprint. So if you change one blueprint, it changes all of them. So you don't have to make a separate blueprint for every door. You just drag out more copies of the blueprint. Okay, so what we really want is for the use command to shoot a line, and when it hits something, to open the door that we're looking at. And this might cause a problem because the collision isn't working on it, right? So I might replace that door with like a box or something, just to see if that fixes it. A casual alternative to Tarkov, yeah. Tarkov, I hear, is pretty brutal. Mystery. Okay. So, how do I do this? Let's start off by turning off InputAction Use here, because this is really not the right place for InputAction Use. It's actually not the right place at all. So let's delete all that, and delete all that, and that. We can still make it reverse when we leave the door. That seems like a nice thing. Event hit. I guess I'll leave that there for now, just so I can figure out later what's going on. So what we want is really like a custom event. And so what I did was I dragged backwards from play, and I said create a custom event. And I'm going to name it, if I can select it, I'm going to name it Open the Door. I don't know. I want to give it something cool. Open Sesame, open... I don't want to just call it open. That's so boring. Clicker. I don't know. Door shall open. Sure. Door shall open. Like, open's just so boring. Okay. So what I did was I dragged backwards from play, and I chose custom event. Custom event. Okay. And that allows you to make your own events. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the use command shoot out a line from the camera, and if it hits the door, then it will trigger the door shall open event on it. Let's see, compile, save, inputs. We could make it so that we could tell it if it's opening from the front or the back. I'm not going to worry about that now. Okay. Alright, so where should event use be? Because we just discovered it should not be in the doors, right? Because the doors, you can only have a door if you do it that way. It should be in the player, okay? So the player, don't use camel casing. So the door is not the right place for it. The right place for it is the player. So under the content first person blueprint folder, is the first-person character blueprint. So if you guys could all navigate over to there, it's under Content, First-Person Blueprints, First-Person BP. Under Blueprints, there is a blueprint called First-Person Character. I will rebuild the lighting. And give me a thumbs up when you have clicked on that blueprint right there. The Content folder, First-Person BP, Blueprints, First-Person Character. Oh, out of coffee. This could be a disaster. Kind of slow typing emojis. You can just be like, yeah, or something. That's fine. Okay. So, I'm going to double click on first person character. You can see there's a lot of stuff here already. And you can see that those two input actions we saw earlier, there was jump, there was fire, they're in there already. I'm actually going to delete out the touch interface stuff because I don't care about it. Use if motion controllers are enabled. No, I don't care about you either. That's something I should mention. You can add these reroute nodes like this. You can actually make the wires go the way you want by double clicking on them, and then you can move them around so you can tidy up your wire networks. You don't have to delete those things. It just kind of bugs me. This is mouse. You're cool. This is gamepad. I'm just gonna. I guess I'll leave that in there. Using head-mounted display. HMD is a VR headset. Head-mounted display. Movement is based on HMD location. I am going to delete that as well. Just to simplify everything. If HMD and motion controllers are enabled, use VR gun and hide the mesh. I will delete you as well. Reset orientation position. I'll delete you as well. And so now you can see it's a lot simpler. Using motion controllers, we'll delete you and delete you, and just do that. You guys don't need to do this. I'm just. Come on. There. Great. This is my own personal biases at work. I did work in VR for 2 years or so. It's not like I hate VR, but I'm not using it, so I don't want all that extra stuff in there. Okay. So you can see here inside of player first-person character, you can see I've now winnowed it down to just really 4 events. I probably should get rid of the gamepad as well because I don't use it, but whatever. So there's 4 events that are in the game in the blueprint as well. First is clicking. Input action fire is bound to shooting the gun. Input action jump is space key, has you jump. And input axis turn and input axis look up is the x-axis and the y-axis of the mouse. So you can see these are just wired right up into add controller yaw input, add controller pitch input. So that connects to the player controller. This has the player jump. One thing you should be aware of is that you can't modify a lot of things on the player that you can modify on like a box. Like on a box we could move the position around, but with a player they have something called a controller that's controlling them, and it sort of overrides things like physics and movement and things like that. So you have to go through certain blueprints. These are not vertically aligned. How dare you, sir? There we go. And so there's certain ways of like adding, you know, like if you want to do a jump pad on a character, like you walk on a level and it boosts you into the sky, you can't just like add to their velocity. Like the physics engine doesn't work on them. And so there's specific nodes for working with players, which is kind of annoying. Okay, so what we want is to add a new thing for the input use. Okay, and so we're going to make a new area. So when they hit use, we're going to shoot an invisible ray out of our eyes. And if we hit a door, then we're going to open that door. Okay, so there's a couple things that need to take place. So the first big question is, how do you shoot something out of your eye? How do you, first of all, how do you know what direction you're looking in? So, in a video game, it's kind of important to know which way is forward, right? Which way is the camera looking? It's kind of important. So, as it turns out, there is a very easy way of doing it. It's called get forward vector. Okay. And so that will get our forward vector, and we're going to get it on, let's see, viewport, first person camera. Okay. So I'm going to drag first person camera to here, and I'm going to get its forward vector. So let me delete U, drag that from there, and type forward. So it's a different get forward vector, I guess. So, so what I did was I dragged out the first person camera, then I dragged out from that and choose get forward vector. And so that will tell me the direction, like you see that giant blue arrow there, that's the forward vector. That's the way that we're looking. And so that's going to give me the direction that we're looking. And we should also get our position, I guess. Seems reasonable. So, let's also drag out from here, and let's get our world position. Location. Okay. Notice none of these have any white things on them, so they're not executing anything yet. I'm just getting ready. So this is going to tell me what direction we're looking in. It's going to be an arrow, probably a normalized vector of unit length, pointing in the direction that we're looking. And the world location is our place in the world for the camera, which is us. It's for the camera. Okay. All right, so when we do this, we are going to need to do a trace. So this is the big learning point for today. Okay, how to do a trace. Trace. And we are going to do a line trace. Could just make it hit door. Do this one. Okay. So this is a very, 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 very important thing. So one of the great ways of interacting in a video game is by shooting a line between 2 points. And it doesn't have to be out of the camera. In this case, it will be, because we want to open whatever door we're looking at. But like if you have a sentry gun, the sentry gun does this, right? Kind of looks around, it goes left, it goes right. It'll be shooting invisible lines, and if it hits the player, target spotted, and starts shooting at it. Okay? That is using a line trace. There's other kinds of traces as well. Capsule trace, sphere trace that trace out 3D chunks through the world. Capsule trace is useful to see if you can walk in a certain direction. Because you make a capsule equal to the size of the player, and you shoot it forward to see if there's an open path that way. But line traces are very, 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 very common. Okay, so the starting place of the line trace is going to be our location. So hook that up. So that's the 3D point in space that we are going to start shooting the line out. And then the ending point is going to be our location times the direction we're looking times the range of it. And I think the range should probably be a variable. So this will be called use range, and it'll be the number of centimeters that we can use a door, essentially. And so we'll change the type of this to be float. And you have to compile it, set a default value. And I think like, I don't know, 3 meters is good. Something like that. We can tweak that. So how do we get the ending point? Well, I told you guys there's math that goes into video games. Now you're going to get to see a little intro to the math that goes into video games, and this is why math is important. We'll probably actually have a lecture on the math, maybe tomorrow, but I'll just do it first, and you can kind of maybe, hopefully, intuitively understand it. So, starting point is my location. That's pretty straightforward, right? The ending point is going to be my location plus the forward vector is the unit vector. It's 1 centimeter ahead of me in the direction I'm looking. So I just want to scale that forward vector out like 300 times. So I'm going to multiply this by a float. What float am I going to multiply it by? This parameter I created here, use range, pull it up there. So it's 300. So it's going to take the direction I'm looking, multiply it by 300, and that's going to create a vector that is 3 meters long. And I'm going to add that to my current location. Vector plus vector. Like that. And that's going to be the ending. And let's see if I can clean this up so it's not quite so noxious. Good enough. And then draw a debug type. I'm going to draw it persistently. So it's going to. So one of the really nice things about the line trace functionality in UE4 is that it's quite easy to mess up the math on this, especially if you've never done linear algebra before. People get it wrong. It'll draw a line from the origin of the world to your point, whatever. So it's really important to turn on the debugging every time you do a line trace, because what you'll see is it'll draw like a red laser beam that shows you where the line trace took place. So I'm going to snap this down here, hit play, and actually let me scroll over here so you can make sure it's happening, right? Hit play. Okay. And then when I hit E, nothing happens. Now the reason why nothing happens is because WASD isn't working either. I think I just screwed something up. I might have deleted something I was supposed to delete. I think I over-aggressively deleted something. Yeah, well, that doesn't matter. So the reason why this isn't getting picked up is because our blueprints, I think, are still grabbing it, maybe? So we go back out of here, and you will be set to not receive any inputs. Action use. This is not activating. Okay, it did trigger. Okay. Start location is here, end location is there. Okay. Not drawing the line. There's the line there. let's see what we hit. So we are going to print the string. And we will drag out from here. So I'm going to have to put the WASD keys back in once we finish here. So I over-aggressively deleted them. So I can't move around and look at the laser. But let's explain what line trace does. So there's a starting location, there's an ending location, and then it's going to hit something. First thing it hits, it returns a thing. This isn't actually an actor, it's actually a hit result structure. And so you drag out from here, you choose break hit result. And you can see it actually gives you quite a lot of information about what was hit. The time, the distance, the actor, if it's got bones, which bone was hit, so you can do a headshot, things like that. The normal vector on the place you hit, so if you're doing like a laser that like reflects off walls and stuff like that, you can do that as well. Location is the place where you hit. I am going to drag from the actor we hit into the string. And so this is just going to print the name of the thing that we hit. And I'm going to increase the use range to be 30 meters because I can't move currently because I deleted the the WASD keybinds. So let's hit play here. And cube 4, okay. Landscape. Landscape. Chair. Wall. Wall. Yeah, it's going right through those doors. I think wall. I think those doors are set up to not editor cube 8, editor cube 9. So they're coming from the camera. That's why it looks like they're behind us a little bit. Maybe we should have it come from the point of the gun. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. So rather than the camera, let's have it come from the point of the gun. So if we look here, there's actually a point right at the end of the gun that is probably a better place for a thing to come from. Because right now the lasers are coming from behind us, which looks a little weird. So we'll have it come out of the gun. So that is that point right there. So I'm going to drag you out and then just hook that up to these two things here. Just compile and save. So rather than the camera, I'm going to use the sphere here. And then it's going to come out of the gun, which makes a little more sense to me. Play. There we go. Looks like the rotation is maybe not set right on it. Maybe we'll use the gun then instead of the sphere. I'm choosing where the lasers are going to come out of. Now, no, these are debugging lasers. Like if you actually want to do a particle effect, there's different ways of doing it. This one's not rotated right either. Alright, so not the gun. I'd have to go back to the camera on it. It's fine. Yeah, this one's not rotated right either. Alright, we'll just use the camera then. It's not a big deal. And if I click on things, you can see it's eternal elevator. Over there, it's hitting nothing because it's too far away. Editor cube, chair. It's going right through the rock because the rock is not set to collide with things. Shattering glass, cube. So it's selecting the right things. The trouble is the door isn't good. So it's trying to figure out why you're not working right. Let's see. SM door is a static mesh component. It's movable. SM door. Where's SM door? So you can figure out why this thing isn't colliding. SM door. Set to block all. I don't see any simple collisions on it. I wonder if that's why. So I'm going to set its collision complexity to simple collision as complex. Use complex as simple. To block all. Okay. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so for whatever reason it doesn't have simple collision turned on. So what I did was, and these lines look like they're coming from the side, but what's actually happening is that it's coming from slightly behind us back here. So the lines are actually correct. If I could use WSD to move, if I hadn't been dumb and deleted them, you'd see the lines are coming out correctly. So what I did to fix the problem, Shami, is I went to the SM door. I did that by clicking on content, searching for SM_door, double clicking on it, and I went to the collision tab up here, and when I clicked on simple collision, nothing was showing, and so that meant it had not generated a simple collision for it. I could have done that, I guess. Collision, auto convex collision, whatever. As it is, I just chose to use the complex collision here as simple, and so down here under collision, I chose collision complexity to use it had a complex collision. So a simple collision would be something usually like a box, like an axis aligned bounding box. You just put a box around the whole thing. There you go. Everything bounces off it. You know, it's a very simple test. You know, to determine if something hits a cubic rectangle is very, very simple. A 3D rectangle is very simple. It had a complex collision generated for it, which is more accurate. You can see around the doorknob right there. There's a ton of details on it, but it hadn't had a simple collision generated. So what I chose was that option right there on the screen where it says use complex collision as simple, so that when it does a simple collision test, like with the Traceline, the Traceline has an option for doing simple collisions or complex collisions. Then now it's going to use the collision mesh that was generated for the simple one, and it works right. Okay, Shami, do you see that? So you have to open up the door and then go over here and choose collision complexity. Use complex collision as simple. That's one way of doing it. There's several ways you could resolve this, but this is an easy one. Probably the same thing's going on with the rock here. The rock probably doesn't have... if I go to the collision on the rock, you see how there's no simple collision set up on it. But if I go to complex collision, it's got one. So I could do the same thing on the rock. That's why I could walk through the rock. Can you create your own simple collision? Can you smell what the rock is cooking? Of course you can. Let's see. Collision. Auto convex collision. Whole count for precision. Yeah, okay, so there. And so let me see if that works before I talk much more about it. It's been a while since I played with it. Yeah, good. Yes, you can. To answer your question. So I generated a simple collision for it. I went up to the collision menu up here, chose to do auto convex collision, and clicked apply. And then that, when you turn on the collision tab for simple, you see there's now a simple collision, and then the complex collision has far more detail in it. The simple collisions are obviously less computationally expensive to do. And for all intents and purposes, it's good enough, you know, especially for just like using a door or whatever. So we could do that for the door as well if we wanted. Some door, collision, auto convex collision, apply. And then if we turn on simple collision, let's see, we have to do this over here. Project default. Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, and so that, like I said, is another way of doing it. So I generated a simple collision on it. You can see there's much less detail on the doorknobs here. If I use the complex, you can see it's a very precise collision mesh on it. Yeah, the simple one is error prone, but for the purposes of things like hitting a use, like it's good enough. Okay, so save that, and then it should still work. Balls are bouncing off of it now. And E, oak door, E, oak door. Okay, cool. Alright, so we got, what, 20 minutes left? Alright, be nice if I could move. You know what, I'm gonna go and put that back in real fast. Any questions so far? So, the big learning point for today is the Traceline tool. The Traceline tool, from one point to another point, what's the first thing you hit? And this is used everywhere. It's used everywhere. Like, if you have a monster and it wants to see if it can see the player, Traceline. If you have a gun, you're shooting, Traceline. If you want to see if the sky is visible, you Traceline from the top of your head up and see if you hit the skybox. You know, Traceline. You know, if you want to see if you're underwater, Traceline and see if you hit the ocean surface. You know, if it's above you, you're underwater. You know, it is one of the basic tools of game development, and to really be able to use it, you have to have at least a basic understanding of vector math, and we'll talk about that tomorrow probably. All right, I'm just gonna copy my thing back in here. First person blueprint, blueprints, first person character, and see if I can find the thing that I deleted. Main menu. Oh yeah, I added a main menu thing. That's cool. Movement input. Okay, so that's the one that I got rid of. Yeah. If using an HMD. Yeah. All right. Okay. If it is fault. Yeah, this is the one for when we're not using an HMD. Fantastic. And I'm just going to click on this, and it selects the whole thing. Copy. Come back over into Summer. And here. Paste. I don't need to copy the... I'm lucky. All right, let's try it one more time. Okay. So I'm going to select all these things here. Copy. paste. And I don't know if that's even going to work, but let's try it. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, worked. Okay, so I got movement back. Cool. Oops. There we go. So when I hit E, you'll see that it's shooting a laser out of my slightly behind me because there's a camera back there, but thought is good. Okay, so it's like really, and I have the line traces set to be persistent, just so I can look at them. In reality, maybe for duration, like 5 seconds. Yeah, that's fine. So there we go. After 5 seconds, the thing will vanish. You see I can hit the rock now. I can't move through the rock now. Remember before, when I entered the rock, I was able to show you guys what backface culling was all about. Now I can't because I generated a collision mesh for it. And so what I'm hitting use right now, and you can see it is picking up the doors properly, even the glass on it. Okay. Okay, so there we go. So what we want now is for it to only if we hit a door, then open it. Yep. Oh, you deleted it too. Make a new first-person template, and then copy that chunk into your world, or if you want to do it by hand, I guess I can post that. Let's see. Screenshot that for you. Like I said, it is dangerous to delete too much stuff like that. Here, you can recreate. That might be a good experiment for you. So add movement input. Like I said, you can't just like directly mess with the player's stats like this physics like you can a normal object, because there is a controller that controls a pawn, and that actually will override any attempt to change things on it. So you have to do things like this: add controller pitch input, add movement input, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to close out of view, and we'll come back in here. So the question is, how do we tell if what we hit was a door or not? I guess one way we could do it is by using the display name, right? Like if the display name is oak door, then do something. But there's actually the official way is actually to do something a little weird. Cast to oak door. Okay, I think that's the name of our class, right? Under bill, we called it oak door. That's the blueprint, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we try converting whatever it is we hit into an oak door. This will only work if it's an oak door. If it was not an oak door, if we hit use and we hit the rock instead, then it will do cast failed. And so I'll just do a little print string on here just to show you guys cast failed. And then if it succeeded, we will be like print string. You used a door. Yay. Okay. Alright. Compile, save, and play. And so if I hit something that is not a door, it says cast failed. Cast failed, cast failed, cast failed, Cast failed. But if I hit a door, you used a door. You used a door. Cool. Okay. So that is the right way of doing it. And the reason why we care about this is because what we get out of this is actually an oak door. So when you try converting, this is just an actor. An actor could be anything that moves around in the world. When you cast it, or really any object, it doesn't even have to move. Any object in a world is called an actor. We try converting it into an oak door. And the reason why we do that is because we had that event set up called open the door or whatever it's called. I've already forgotten the name of it. So now that it's an oak door, we can actually call that event called open door shall open. That was it. Okay. And this will invoke the event on the door. You can't do that on an actor. If we try doing this on an actor, if we try saying door shall open, it doesn't appear. You can only call door shall open on an oak door because it only exists on an oak door. So we convert the thing to an oak door. If it succeeds, then we call that event on it, and then over here under oak door, door shall open will get called, and it should open the door. Okay. That is the dream. Let's see if it works. Bloop, open door, bloop, open door. Cool. And the thing still only swings shut once we walk through it. So the range is a little bit long right now because remember I accidentally crippled myself. So let's reduce the range back down to something reasonable like a meter or something like that. First person character. Wow, that got really small all of a sudden. What happened here? This thing's shrunk. So right now the range is 30 meters. I'm going to turn it down to a meter. I don't know, something like that. Meter and a half. 4 feet. Yeah, like a meter. Let's try that. So I'm trying to use it now, and it's invoking the thing. Hello, hello. Might be too short a range because it is starting from behind us. So let's change that range to 3 meters, like what we had originally. I don't think it's reaching out front of. Play. There we go. Yeah, that's how far it's going. It's not, because it starts from behind us, it's actually not as far as you would think. So I'll make it 5 meters. See if that feels right. A lot of game development is just playing it and just seeing what feels right. So, yeah, it seems about right. Might be a little far. I can open it from this far away. Might be a little far. Okay. I'll turn it down to 4 meters. And it should be about right. Yeah, it seems about right. Yeah. Good enough. Maybe. So I did catch the door on the way when you're going out. So maybe like 450. say that sounds about right. Okay. So let me pull the blueprint back up here, and we'll go through it from the top one more time. What is going on here? Okay. So when we've got our keybind set up, right, for input action use, and the only thing honestly that should be ever consuming the player's inputs is the first person blueprint. Okay. Nothing else. None of the doors should be consuming inputs. Just this. This is like the one-stop shop for all your keybind actions, things like that. Okay. I'll add a comment box for this. Use. So when the user hits use, then that triggers, and it does a line trace. It's going to shoot a line out of the camera, starting at the camera's location, going to the camera's location, plus 450 centimeters in the direction we're looking. So that's, you give it a start, you give it an end, it draws an invisible, well, it's supposed to be invisible. Turn this off, actually. No debug, because we know it works now. It draws an invisible line through the world. First thing it hits is returned here. The thing that you hit, the only thing you can do with it is to break the hit result. That's it. So that gives you all the different information. If I wanted to know the normal, like maybe I can't open it from the side, I could do some sort of like dot product or something, which we'll talk about maybe tomorrow. It'll tell us, you know, which way the door is facing, basically. I could get all sorts of information about what I hit. The most important one is the actor that I hit. I cast that actor to an oak door. Oops. Which is like an if statement. It's very commonly used like an if statement, like if what I hit was an oak door. That it seems kind of weird, but it's actually necessary because if you want to call a custom event on an object, you have to convert it to that object first. So we convert the actor that was returned to an oak door, and if that succeeded, then we call the custom event we have set up. And you can do this for like every type of object in the world. So maybe you have a use object for light switches, for doors, things like that. You can try one after another, casting them into a door, to a light switch, every category of object that you have, and then call the light switch toggle, you know, whatever thing. Like use can do a lot of things. The E button is used for a lot of things in video games. So you can do more than just cast oak door. You can, say, all right, if that failed, then we'll try, I don't know, casting it to, eternal elevator. And so if we succeeded at an oak door, then it's going to open the door. If it's an eternal elevator, then we will stop it from moving, I guess. I don't know. We can set... what was it called? Elevation? Set max elevation. That's it. So we'll set the maximum elevation of the eternal elevator to 0. So if we use the eternal elevator, it will stop. And then if it's not an eternal elevator, and so you just sit there and say, if it's this, do this. If it's this, do this. If it's this, do this. And if it gets too complicated, you can set up a switch statement, which will organize it differently. But first, it doesn't like that. What's wrong? Type of object is yeah. All right. Okay. And so now, if we play this, come over here, door opens, come over to the eternal elevator, click on it. Uh-oh. What is that thing called? max elevation. Set max elevation to 0. So if it's an internal elevator, we'll destroy it. Let's try that. See if that works. Boom. We crushed. Kill it. Alright. So yeah, for the eternal elevator, I could probably add a boolean on there or whatever to enabled, disabled, something like that. We got 4 minutes left. Let's do that. So for the eternal elevator class, I could make a custom event that gets triggered if you use it. So we'll make custom event, add custom event, and I'll call this one eternal elevator used, and this will enable or disable the elevator. Okay, so if you hit it once, it'll stop. If you hit it again, it'll go again. So I will add a variable here called enabled or whatever, and I will. Is there a toggle? No, that's unfortunate. I'm sure there's a toggle ability. I will set enabled to be the opposite of enabled. So I'm going to get it enabled, and I am going to actually do a not boolean. There you go. So when this event is called, it's going to get the current state of enabled, not it. So if it was true, it becomes false. False becomes true. I honestly think there should be like a toggle node where it just flips something, because this is fairly common. Boolean. Or if there's got to be something there, right? No, they're not. Okay. Okay. So it will get enabled, not it, set enabled. So it's going to turn enabled on or off every time you hit use on it, and move this up. Use key turns on or off the elevator. Let's move this out of the way. And then for event tick, we will branch if it is enabled. So only if the elevator is turned on, then we will do our stuff. Otherwise, if enabled is false, nothing happens. And so it'll just not do anything. Okay. Line those up. I guess that works. Organizing the spaghetti mess is always a thing. Okay. So we now the only thing we need to do is have the use key call this event we just created. We created a custom event, and so when we hit use, we want to trigger this event. So come back into the first person character, and so if we if it's an outdoor, we call the custom event called door shall open. If it's an elevator, then we will call the event, shoot, what did I just call it? toggle set enabled use crap. I don't remember what I called it. Set event. Eternal elevator used. Okay. So we're going to call an event on it called eternal elevator used. There we go. Okay. So when we hit use, if it's an oak door, we open it. If it's an eternal elevator, it's going to call the event eternal elevator used. And the eternal elevator used event is going to toggle whether or not it is enabled. And so that should work. Oh, it defaults to off. So let's turn it on by default. There we go. Ta-da. And that one's too far away, so I can't do it from a distance, but from here, yeah, works pretty well. I guess feasibly it could get stuck if I freeze it up at the top and jump off, then I don't know, might have no way of getting back on it. You know what I mean? So from a game design perspective, I don't know, maybe you could have it like detect if the, I don't know. A lot of times in video games will have like an elevator call button, which does that, essentially. But yeah, whatever. As a demo, works pretty well. So yeah, so in whatever blueprint you want to have get called, you create a custom event, and then in your first person thing, you have your use key, do a trace line, what it hits, you check to see what type it is, and you call the custom event on that type. And that is our lecture for today. Any questions about it? Pretty important lecture today. The line trace is the hero of the story. So all the other things are just kind of details about how to get things to talk to each other. There's various ways you can have a blueprint talk to another blueprint and have them connect. This method works pretty well for what we're doing here, where you sort of send an event to another person. If I was doing it better, it'd probably just called used on each one, so I don't have to look up the name every time. The screen freeze there. Just have each object that can be used, give it a custom event called used, and then you don't have to look it up every time. This was a lot. Yes, it's definitely a lot. So what do I want you to do? I want you to add the ability to use an object in the world any way you want. So you're going to have to set up that input action for the use key. You're going to have to do the trace line, and you can have it do anything you want. You can have it do a particle effect. Dialogue, yeah, dialogue's fine. If you use the penguin, then have the penguin talk to you. That'd be fun. Yeah, anything you like. I will post the blueprint for you here. talking toaster. Toaster's like an ongoing joke if you ever play like Fallout or Wasteland or something like that. There was a toaster repair skill in the original Wasteland, which was the inspiration for the Fallout set of games. And I think they brought it back in the remakes of the Wasteland series. Okay, so that's the use part, and then for terminal elevator, that's that. And then we need to see, let's over here under project settings, input. That was a joke from Persona 3. Interesting. When did Persona 3 come out? Probably predates it, is my guess. 2006. Yeah, the original Wasteland was like an 80s game, I think. 88, yeah. So, it inspired a lot of video games. Especially Fallout, though. Brian Fargo is famous. Bard's Tale is a classic. Ultima is a classic. Michael Stackpole, he's a famous author. It's kind of a hard game, too. Yeah, okay. It's funny. Okay. So yes, you set up a input. You have the input trigger, and again, when you're building these things, just take it one step at a time. So start off by just verifying that when they press use, print string hello, run it, hit the key, make sure it prints hello. If it doesn't, then you need to figure out who's eating your input. You know. If it does work, then do a line trace and turn on the line debugging, so you can see where the line trace is happening, make sure it's going the right way, and then print hello. And, just as you go along, just always be verifying that things are working along the way, and you will get it done in no time. And by no time, I mean probably an hour or two. Okay, so. That's it for IS50A. I see the 50B people are here. I'm going to need to take a 10-minute break. I've been talking for 2.5 hours straight. So, IS50A people, start working on this now. It's lab time. You're free to hang out with the IS50B people and see what they're doing. And just pop in and ask questions. It is your lab time. Their lecture time is your lab time, and vice versa. Okay? So thanks, you guys. This is a really important lecture today. This is one of the most fundamental ways of actually making a game. So it might seem like a lot, but this is the key that unlocks gaming. So we'll talk about the math tomorrow, I guess, and then this stuff over here might make more sense after we talk about the math behind it. Okay. All right, so peace out, you guys, and I will see you on the flip side.